Great. So the ChimpCARE tool is a free web-based resource that has been developed for U.S. zoos and sanctuaries that's designed to assess chimpanzee care. As I mentioned before, the plan for today is to run through an overview of the tool, highlighting its features and applications, and then I'll pull up the tool itself and we can go over what it looks like to fill out the tool. There will also be time afterwards to go through the tool yourself if you'd like, so feel free to think of data, which could include examples from your own facility, or it can also be hypothetical data. And we are also really open to hearing any feedback on the tool's effectiveness and usefulness given different facility needs. So if you have any thoughts or questions at all, please feel free to let me know during the session or after through our email at chimpcare@lpzoo.org. And I also want to mention that the tool is free and accessible for anyone to try out and use at any point. So for a little bit of background, the ChimpCARE tool project began in 2019 by Dr. Steve Ross and has been funded by the Arcus Foundation from its start. In order to create the tool, there were over 150 scientific papers that were reviewed and assessed that went into informing the tool. And with all of the information available on chimpanzee care and welfare, this tool serves as a nice resource that consolidates it all into one place, providing a systematic way to evaluate care. And you can also find that information in a literature review that was published separately titled The Impact of Care on Chimpanzee Welfare, a Comprehensive Review. In addition to this research, expert input was also used to inform the tool. So during the initial process of designing the tool, the team had to decide what the tool could and could not reasonably do. So the concept originally began as an individual welfare tool, but transitioned to a group-level care tool that is specifically meant to be used internally and privately by institutions. The tool has been piloted at various zoos and sanctuaries, and we are in the process of conducting additional site visits. So please also let us know if you'd be interested in a site visit from us, and we would be more than happy to discuss details. Some key features of the tool that we always like to emphasize are that it's designed to assess the care that you provide to the chimpanzees. It's based on science, considering the published literature to inform the tool. It's completely private, so the data is not stored or shared, and it is completed on the social group level. This tool is not, however, an evaluation of individual animal behavior and welfare, or is it a judgment of your care. We understand that not all opportunities will be available or appropriate for your institution or for your chimpanzees. So the ChimpCARE tool has a variety of uses depending on your organization's needs. And some of the uses can include advocating for care and habitat enhancements and validating areas needing improvement, using the tool to determine what actions are likely to have the largest positive impact on chimpanzee welfare, tracking progress over time, for instance, by using the tool annually to quantify improvements, and strategically planning for future habitat designs and husbandry strategies. And even organizations that don't currently house chimpanzees can use the tool to prepare for future welfare considerations. And again, because the data is not stored anywhere apart from if you choose to download it to your computer, you can put in completely hypothetical data to see how those choices could potentially impact welfare. So the tool itself will cover 6 main topics that we know all impact welfare, including the chimpanzee's social life, their housing, diet, enrichment, health, and programs. The housing topic is broken down into 2 subtopics, space and complexity, which are weighted by enclosure access in order to provide a more accurate representation of how often the chimps are actually able to utilize their space. Each topic is also weighted based on its likely impact on welfare and the amount of scientific literature that's available. And one thing I want to highlight is that within the tool, at the bottom of each tab, you'll be able to view the references that were used for each of the topics so that you can refer to the research behind each of the questions. We want to make sure that we are fully transparent about how the scores are calculated, so we have a scoring guide available that goes into detail about the scoring system that we use. And on the tool, you can also access a user guide that could be helpful to follow when filling out the tool. So one important and exciting output of the tool is this customized feedback report that's produced. The report looks like this for each topic and will highlight your strengths, shown with a gold star, and any opportunities for improvement, shown with a green arrow. If there's any information missing, there will be a blank circle that is shown. And this document can also just be a good resource to have on hand because it summarizes the recommendations for each of the topics that are important for chimpanzee welfare. And it can also be a nice document to have highlighting everything that is already being done within your facility to contribute to and improve chimpanzee welfare. We are also continuing to plan future updates for the tool, so some of these updates may include adding specific questions pertaining to geriatric chimps and chimps with unique needs, since we know that their care may differ from the rest of the group. In the future, we also hope that this tool can be expanded beyond U.S. institutions. And our updates have also largely depended on the feedback that we have previously received, so we are, again, really open to hearing any suggestions. So that's it for the quick overview. I would like to thank all of these people and organizations for all of the support that they've provided throughout this project. And at this point, I'll go ahead and pull up the tool online and we can run through a sample set of data together. There's also the tool link here if you'd like to play around with inputting data on your own. All right, so this is what the tool looks like once you have pulled it up. You can find the tool either by searching directly using the URL, or you can also go through ChimpCARE's website, and there's a link to the tool there. So this is what the welcome page looks like. And the welcome page provides information about the features and uses of the tool. And it also is where you can find all of your support materials. So you can find the user guide, scoring guide, and literature review. And all of the topics are listed here at the top for you to navigate through. And we can go ahead and click start. So for this example run through, I've already inputted some sample data just as an example. So this is what all of this looks like. For this first topic, starting with social, there's a reminder here that the tool is meant to be filled out focusing on each social group. So you'll start by entering the group's name. So here we've got sample data. And then you'll answer questions about how many adult males and adult females there are. So in this example, we have 2 adult males, 3 adult females. We have 2 chimps between the ages of 0 and 4, 4 chimps between the ages of 15 and 35, and 1 geriatric individual. The last question asks about monthly planned vision fusion opportunities for the group. And then at the bottom is this View References button that I mentioned, which gives a list of the sources that supported each question within each topic. Okay, next. So the next section to fill out is housing, which asks about the indoor and outdoor spaces that the group has access to throughout the year. So you'll start by entering information about the indoor public-facing spaces that the group has access to. So in this example, we have one, which we've called our day room. It then asks whether the ceiling and walls of the space are climbable. In this case, the day room has mesh walls and mesh ceilings, so yes. Then you'll be asked about the indoor non-public facing spaces like holding. In this case, we have one which we've called bedroom, and the bedroom also has a mesh ceiling and wall, so yes. And lastly, you'll be asked about the outdoor public and non-public facing spaces that the group has access to. So we have 1 yard here, and you'll be asked about what kind of enclosure it is, with the definitions provided here and a drop down. So next, this Access tab is used to calculate the scores for space and complexity. You can see here that the names under the enclosure column were the names that you inputted into the Housing tab. So for Access, you'll fill out the table with the average number of hours per day for each month that the chimpanzee group has access to each space. And this is considering all 24 hours within the day. And this table is included because access to spaces can differ dramatically throughout the year in some regions. So we want to ensure that the score is accurately representing the chimpanzee's experiences. So for this group's example, they have day and night access to their indoor space, except for a few hours in the morning where they're shifted down into their bedroom for cleaning. So the indoor access is on average 22 hours for each month. They are also given access to their bedrooms for 6 hours each day on average, and 8 hours of access to their outdoor yard on average. And so this is a pretty simple example for access, but for many zoos, the estimated values here may be different depending on the time of year, as well as their specific routines. And one thing I want to mention is that if you change the number of spaces that you have in the housing tab, it will clear what's been filled out in this access table, since this table is dependent on that information. So that's just something to be aware of when you are filling out those spaces in housing. And that's something we will be updating for the future. So next is space, where you'll start by filling out the estimated square footage for each of your spaces in this table. So in this example, our day room is 5,000 square feet, our yard is 12,000 square feet, and our bedroom is 800 square feet. And next is height, where you will fill out the approximate maximum height of the area that most of the group can access at any time. And so this table pre-populates a reference point based on the information that you entered in the housing tab. So in our indoor day room, we indicated that the ceiling and walls were climbable, which is why this is our reference point. So in this example, we'll say that they're 25 feet high. In our yard, we had indicated that it was a dome enclosure. And in this example, the enclosure goes up to 35 feet tall. And our bedroom has a mesh ceiling that is 15 feet high. Next, this outdoor access section is automatically populated based on what you entered into the access table, so you will not need to interact with it. And then lastly, you'll fill out these yes/no questions on abiotic conditions. So this next section is complexity, which is meant to capture the entire three-dimensional space that the chimpanzees live in and how they're able to utilize that space. So the first question here asks about substrate cover, and there's a helpful substrate key here that you can refer to. So for this table, you will fill out an estimated percentage of how much each of the substrates are for each of your spaces, adding up to 100%. So in this indoor day room, there's 100% biofloor. In the yard, there's 75% grass and 25% rocky substrate. And the bedroom is 100% concrete. So next we'll be asked about the elevated horizontal travel opportunities, which asks whether there's a safe way for individuals to travel between structural elements while remaining at least 3 feet off of the ground, as well as whether there are multiple routes between those elements. And if you had indicated that you had a geriatric individual in your social group, there will be a question here asking about appropriate modifications to those climbing materials. So next we'll be asked about the opportunities provided to rest off of the ground, and you can refer to this elevated resting site definition here for examples as well. And you'll answer questions for each of your spaces. So here you'll be asked about the variety, tier, and how many chimps all of your elevated resting sites can accommodate in total. So you'll go ahead and fill out those answers for each of your spaces. And then the permanent vertical structure section is structured in a similar way. You can again refer to this definition here, and you'll be asked about the variety, tier, and quantity of permanent vertical structures. Next, you'll be asked about semi-permanent features in the space, which provide the chimpanzees with additional opportunities for change in variety in their enclosure. And lastly, you will answer questions about the nesting materials that are provided, including the type and variety. So the rest of the tool, diet, enrichment, health, and programs are all yes or no questions. So it should be pretty straightforward from here on out. And diet covers questions related to foraging opportunities, individual needs, variety, and quality of food. And just as a reminder, you can always click this view references to see all of the sources that are supporting those questions. Enrichment covers questions related to planning, accessibility, and variety of enrichment. Health covers health monitoring, physical exams, supplementation, and recovery management. And programs is broken up into 4 different sections: behavior and training, which covers behavioral observations and positive reinforcement; safety protocols, which covers sanitation, facility safety and emergency protocols; visitor effects, which cover audio and visual barriers; and human-animal relationships, which cover staff recruitment and retention. And so now this is the scoring tab, which reflects your percentage scores per topic. This is also, this embedded link here is where you can download your scoring guide, which goes into specific detail about how all of the points are allocated. And this is also where you'll be able to download your customized feedback report. So we can take a look as an example. So again, this is where for maximum amount, for an item where the maximum number of points were scored, you will receive a gold star. And for items where there is potential for room for improvement, you will see this green arrow. So the customized feedback report is broken up by each topic. And then under each item, there is a paragraph summarizing best practice guidelines for each of the items. So in this example, the maximum amount of points were received for group size, male-female composition, and age diversity. And there was room for improvement for the fission fusion opportunities that are offered. There were opportunities for improvement for the amount of available space and accessible heights. And for complexity, there was room for improvement for the elevated resting sites and the permanent vertical structures. And again, this document can also just be a nice way to highlight everything that is already being done to promote positive welfare. And then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, there are the complete list of references that inform the tool, as well as links to their original sources. So this can just be a nice document to have on the side to be able to refer to in the future. So the last tab here is this import export feature, which allows you to save and re-upload your data for later. So after filling out the tool, you'll want to click here to export your data, and it will download that file to your computer. So you can see here that this sample data has already been imported into the tool. And this data that's downloaded isn't going to be in a readable file. It will just be in code. So it will just be used to repopulate the tool later. And then there's also a reset button here, which will clear the entire tool. So it's important to make sure that you have exported your data before clicking the big red button. And I think that is it for the tool run through. I'll go ahead and stop recording.